back. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Troy, I want to thank you for your powerful statement and for your courage. And I understand why my friend from California wants to tell us that this hearing isn't about Donald Trump, because that's too difficult a topic.
Gerry, as my friend, I did want to thank you for bringing
Mr. Chairman, it's my time. I reclaim my time. Imagine it's October 2020, and someone tells you that President Donald Trump is going to use violence and chaos directed at the Congress and the Vice President of the United States to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election. For many, that would have been hard to believe, and I'm sure my friends on the other side would have said, there they go again. Critics of Trump will just claim anything. But everyone here saw what happened on January 6th, and we now have, in fact, a federal indictment charging him with that very matter. This month, we learned that Donald Trump's shadow administration at Project 2025 is planning executive orders that would invoke the Insurrection Act and allow him to send military out to patrol American streets. Ms. Troy, some of my colleagues across the aisle have suggested that Trump's quotes about using military in our cities and the rumored plans to invoke the Insurrection Act are simply bluster designed to galvanize his base. Would you dismiss Trump's plans to deploy the military against American citizens as bluster?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely not. Having worked in the Trump administration when President Trump at the time repeatedly raised the Insurrection Act as a potential to be used on protesters, even safe protesters, repeatedly. And I can tell you that there were some serious heated discussions with members of his own cabinet, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Staff, heads of law enforcement, who expressed significant concern about the things being discussed to be used against our own American citizens. That is something that should be taken very, very seriously.
On June 1, 2020, on June 1, Americans watched as the National Guard participated in a violent crackdown near the White House. That's what you're referring to, is that not right?
Correct.
And there was a heated debate, and the president was the one asking that federal troops, military, U.S. military, be called, up to 10,000 troops to quell peaceful protests in Washington, D.C. Is that accurate?
That is correct. I was there that day.
And it was the president arguing to use the military.
That is correct.
And presumably, General Milley at the time resisted those calls. Is that correct?
That is correct, and so did Secretary Esper.
And that might have something to do with President Trump referring to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley, his chairman, as a traitor, and invoking the fact that in the old days, the price to be paid for convicted treason is death. Is that correct?
That is correct. Chairman Milley was just doing his job in military service.
Do you believe that the deployment of 10,000 troops at that time would have been consistent with the mission of the American military, suppressing peaceful demonstrations by fellow Americans in the nation's capital?
President Trump was told repeatedly that that would not be an appropriate use of the military resources, and he was also told that his efforts to resituate law enforcement and use law enforcement agencies that were not appropriate for crowd control were also incorrect uses of what our law enforcement and these entities are traditionally used for.
In your testimony, you cited violent language, increasingly incendiary language being invoked by President Trump about his so-called enemies. One of the words he used was vermin. What does that echo in your mind? Anyone else come to mind historically who referred to enemies of the state as vermin?
Yes, the horrible Hitler.
And Goebbels. Thank you. Thank you so much for your courage. Thank you for being here. And I hope the American people take heed from your strong words today about the threat that's looming. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.